The rain had just started tapping softly on the windows of the art studio when I first noticed him looking at me that way. Not like I was just another assistant with brushes in hand, but like I was something he hadn't seen before. Something that made him pause. I remember it so clearly because it was the first time in months I felt seen. My name is Rachel Palmer. I'm 37, recently divorced, and trying to find pieces of myself again. When I took the job as an art coordinator for one of the city's most renowned sculptors, I never expected anything to unfold the way it did. Especially not with him. His name was Logan Brooks. He was 45, quiet, sharp-jawed, with graying hair that only made him more handsome and arms that showed years of carving stone and wood. His studio was filled with unfinished pieces, figures frozen mid-pose, slabs still raw and untouched, and the faint scent of varnish in the air. I loved it. It smelled like creation, like starting over. Like maybe I could breathe again. He didn't talk much in the beginning. Just nods, brief instructions, and once or twice a quiet laugh when I spilled turpentine or knocked over a stool. I'd catch myself watching him from across the room, how his hands moved on the chisel, how his eyes narrowed in concentration. Weeks passed. Then came the night that changed everything. We had stayed late. The commission he was working on had a deadline, and I offered to help him organize his materials. The lights were low. Music was playing softly from his old speakers, something jazzy that I didn't recognize but made the air feel warmer. At some point, we both stood in front of his latest sculpture. It was a tall wooden figure, its shape bold and abstract, but the curve of the shoulders and the twist of its form felt strangely intimate. He asked, "What do you see in it?" I hesitated. "I see tension, like someone's holding back something they want to say." He looked at me then, really looked at me. His eyes were a soft hazel, and for a long moment, neither of us said a word. Something shifted. I felt it like a wave beneath my skin. I bit my lip, unsure of what I was inviting, but I didn't step away. He took a slow step closer. My heart was thudding in my chest, so loud I thought he could hear it. I should have looked away, should have reached for my coat, and left. But I didn't. "You're different than I thought," he said, voice low. "Is that good?" I whispered, and immediately regretted how breathless I sounded. He didn't answer. Instead, his hand reached out, hesitating for a fraction of a second before brushing a strand of hair from my cheek. His fingers lingered at the edge of my jaw, and I shivered. I wasn't cold. I knew where this was going, and maybe a part of me wanted it to. Not because I was lonely or craving attention, but because it had been so long since someone looked at me like I mattered. "I should go," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Do you want to?" he asked. I didn't. My breath hitched as he moved in closer, his presence big, warm, magnetic. I remember feeling his hand on my waist, firm but careful, like he wasn't sure how far I'd let him go. I bit my lip again, not from nerves, but from how intense it felt. His size, his closeness, everything about him overwhelmed my senses. But I didn't push him away. Instead, I leaned in. That night wasn't about recklessness. It wasn't a wild moment born from desperation. It was slow, emotional, unexpected. We didn't cross every line. We didn't rush. But we stood there in that studio, hearts loud, breath shaky, and walls crumbling down. He held me, not just with his arms, but with presence. Strong, patient, grounding. I remember pressing my forehead against his chest, closing my eyes, and feeling safe for the first time in ages. Logan whispered, "You don't have to be strong right now." And I let the tears come. Silent, raw, overdue. He didn't pull away. The days after were strange. We didn't talk about it, not at first. He still gave instructions, I still arranged paints and labeled supplies. But something had changed. There was a softness in the way he looked at me now. And I noticed he started staying later just to talk. One Friday evening, he asked if I wanted to go see a local gallery exhibit. I said yes. It wasn't a date, at least not officially. But walking beside him, our arms occasionally brushing, I felt that pull again. That quiet electricity. We didn't talk much at the gallery, just wandered and stared at paintings, sometimes commenting on the colors or brushstrokes. But near the last room, when the lights dimmed and a slow melody played overhead, he reached for my hand. This time, I didn't bite my lip. I smiled, and I let him hold it. We began spending weekends together. It was slow, respectful, careful. Not the whirlwind romance I used to dream about when I was younger, but it felt more real. He showed me how to sandwood. I introduced him to oat milk lattes. He told me stories of his past, how he'd lost his younger brother in a car crash, how art had saved him. And I told him about my divorce, how my ex-husband had slowly made me feel small, unworthy, invisible. Logan never once made me feel that way. One rainy Sunday, months later, I stood beside him in the studio again. He had finished the wooden sculpture, the same one we stood in front of the first night. Only now it had changed. The curve was more open. The tension I had once seen was replaced with grace. He called it becoming. "It's you," he said. I blinked. "What do you mean?" "That sculpture," he said, "is what I saw in you. Someone breaking free." I wanted to say something poetic or deep in return, but all I could do was reach up, kiss him softly, and let my heart speak through the silence. Sometimes, healing doesn't look like grand gestures or dramatic confessions. Sometimes, it looks like standing in a dim art studio with the sound of rain outside, realizing that someone chose to understand you. I had spent so long being careful, building walls, biting my lip at everything I felt, afraid of what it meant. But with Logan, I didn't have to. And no, I didn't push him away. Not that night. Not the next. Not ever since. Because sometimes, what we need is to stop holding ourselves back. To stop measuring our worth by past hurt. To stop apologizing for wanting to be held. I thought I was broken. I thought I had nothing left to give. But that night in the studio, when I looked into his eyes and let my guard down, I learned something. I wasn't broken. I was just waiting for the right person to hold the pieces gently. And he did. Every single one.